Now, in the mid-21st century, mankind has reached a golden age. In science, the creative and performing arts, medicine, and technology, the world moves forward fueled by innovation and purpose. And while these events occur, the average person moves through daily life in earnest pursuit of a healthy life, working, raising families, taking ease, and pursuing the infinite through spirituality and religion. We do this in a gorgeous and complex realm, our own blue planet Earth. At the same time, the world is a mess. Pandemics, the rise of fascism, income inequality, global warming, racism, mass incarceration, nuclear proliferation. The list goes on and on. It's as easy to view 21st century life through a dark glass as through a light one. And from many points of view, this is true. Surely either global warming or the arms race could do away with us all. Man's inhumanity to man is a classic tale. In the 20th century, 500 million human beings were wiped off the face of the earth in a series of hideous wars. Before that, slavery, serfdom, the Inquisition, mass starvation, religious wars, going back in time to our ancestors in the African savannah. When we think about our own lives, we may see the behavior as foreign. Why do people act like that? How can they be so cruel? How can they look at things like environmental pollution, wage inequality, and racism, and then just look away? How can they be so selfish? In our human experience, two forces are always at odds with one another. On the one hand, there is the basic unity of all things. This unity propels the creative forces at work in our lives, the good in us, love, inspiration, unselfishness. All these things come through this higher power. We see its strength and complexity in the vast and unfathomable life force in the oceans, on land, and in the sky. We see it in unselfish acts and heroic deeds. We feel it in our devotion to our friends and family. When we are still and listen, we can feel that energy creating our world. On the other hand, there is the illusion of separateness. This is the voice in our head that glories in our differences from one another because this illusion relies on emotional isolation to flourish. It is the home of our judgment of ourselves and others. It tells us we are smarter than, older than, richer than, poorer than, and so on, and it is never happy. This illusion is the home of greed. It tells us there is never enough. Why else would thousands of people live in homes so big they would never be used? Why would anyone need more money than they could ever spend? All forms of aggression live in this illusion. This illusion is born from the human sense of incompleteness. We feel that something is lacking. We feel a nagging unease. The voice inside our head tells us we need escape and satisfaction. It chatters constantly and its message is always the same. It looks to grow louder, strengthening its presence in our minds. It is the place where our fear lives, and it uses that fear to motivate those deeds we do that do not make us feel proud. Eckhart Tolle calls it the egoic mind. This egoic mind is always present. When we gossip, there it is. When we feel inferior, there it is. When we hate, there it is. Whenever we are unhappy with our situation, the egoic mind is there. We do not hate negative emotion. Conflict drives most of the human story, in fact. The egoic mind, however, doesn't distinguish between petty arguments and genocide. This is why we tolerate the atomic bomb, pernicious pollution, institutional racism, and poverty. Sadly, that part of us is comfortable with the idea of destruction. Buddhists believe that karma, or the consequences of our actions, is cumulative. Once you get a thought rolling and it becomes an action, then positive or negative, it picks up steam. Positive becomes more positive, and negative becomes more negative. It could be argued that the big clouds of negativity in politics and on the internet have grown so large because they both feed our collective appetites for fear. The irony of this is, of course, that our fear of death propels all this pernicious activity. Without a sense of threat, it would have no momentum. Those who understand how to use this collective sense of threat hold great sway in our culture. They feed the egoic mind's illusion of separateness. We have seen this phenomenon in human behavior since the dawn of time, but in particular over the course of the past century. Though negativity creates a buzz, it also creates discomfort and in the karmic dimension perpetuates itself. As Buddhists say, however, karma goes both ways. Our thoughts and actions for the good also build one on the other, beginning beginning in the mind, expressed through actions, and taking root in the outside world. A good mental environment for this begins most simply by creating gaps in the stream of mental chatter, by observing that part of the mind. Eckhart Tolle would say that in the gap we create, we may experience presence, which comes from that unifying life force human beings have tried to know through religion and spirituality for ages. This is the spot the Buddhists look for in meditation, and that Jewish people, Muslims, Christians, and Hindus seek in contemplative prayer. Whenever we feel judgment or condemnation of others, it helps identify our egoic mind at work, and to remember that when amplified, it can cause great harm to ourselves and those around us. An honest look at the power fear-based thinking has in our lives, in the lives of those around us, in the world at large, demonstrates this. Awareness, though, is progress. By observing, we become aware that our ego is part of our mind, but by no means the only part. With practice, we can watch it. When we become the watcher, we can develop detachment and perspective. We realize that being overrun with judgmental thoughts is an actual choice we make. We become aware that we can choose non-judgmental, non-egoic thinking instead. We can choose to dwell in gaps we create within our own constant stream of thinking. In those gaps, we can rest. In a simple way, we can shift our thoughts back to their origin, the timeless, formless presence that gives life to all things. Try this. Next time you're feeling angry or resentful, send a message to the divine creator, whatever your name for she or he is. Ask for health, happiness, and prosperity for the person, place, or thing you resent. Ask sincerely and repeatedly over the course of an afternoon or a day. This practice breaks the cycle of negative thinking by pushing positive energy out into the world. In Alcoholics Anonymous, members claim that 2 weeks of this practice can do away with the resentment completely. Experience with this reminds us that we can change the direction of our thoughts. This is a revelation for many who feel trapped in a cycle of thought they do not like. It shows us that though we may not be aware of it, we choose our thoughts. We can transform them. This knowledge is the first step away from destructive, toxic, egoic thinking. The laws of karma reveal the momentum of unity and the momentum of isolation. We see these things barreling forward before our eyes. The breathtaking power of the natural realm and our place in it versus the widespread destruction propelled by fear. In our thoughts and action, we join one of these teams every day. Life and unity are there for us. All we have to do is choose them.